Here is Cory Gardner, senator from Colorado, correct? I mean, this guy's already trying to protect his reelect, or this sounds like a guy who's afraid of a primary challenge on CNN's State of the Union.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. It's deja vu all over again in Florida this week, where narrow margins of victory are triggering automatic recounts. County election officials have until Thursday to submit their recounted vote totals in the races for Florida governor and the U.S. Senate. Joining me now, Colorado Senator Cory Gardner. He's the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. A statement from your organization, the NRSC, says of Florida, quote, "It's clear the Democrats' goal here is not to count every vote fairly, but to steal an election." Governor Rick Scott, who's running for Senate, has made similar comments. Is there any specific evidence at all of anyone committing fraud or trying to steal the election, trying to change the outcome?
We have a court that has directed certain better behavior out of the Palm County election supervisors. We have courts that are saying follow the law that is not being followed. We know they're not following the law. They certainly weren't following the law. They weren't posting when they were supposed to be about the results of ballots coming in. They weren't providing the canvas, the total number of ballots that had been cast. And courts have agreed with us on those points. So I think there's clear evidence that the Constitution was violated, and a court in Florida has said the same.
Here you have a politician promoting this garbage, also being allowed to present it on CNN's State of the Union. We saw this on MSNBC too. Chuck Todd had this guy on. He said the same bullcrap and was not essentially laughed off, right? Like, oh, he's a senator, so we're going to let him say whatever he wants. This is sheer BS. Continue.
Well, this is what I'm taking issue with. There is a difference between all the things that you're taking issue with, legitimate areas of concern about the behavior of election officials in Palm Beach County and in, more importantly, or more specifically, in Broward County. But there's a big difference between that and fraud and stealing and theft of an election. I guess the question is, does the NRSC think that every single vote legally cast by Election Day should be counted? Is that an important principle for you?
Every vote legally cast should be counted, and every vote legally cast should be counted the same, whether it's Miami or Pensacola. We shouldn't have standards that are different in Broward County or Palm County.
Pause it. Let's be clear on what's going on here. And this is the same thing that they argued in Florida in 2000, too. Which was, you can't recount these ballots that got screwed up in this in West Palm Beach, because what about the guys in the Panhandle? How come they don't get a recount? Continue.
I don't take this lightly. We need to make sure that we are protecting the integrity of the electorate in Florida, that every vote is counted, and to make sure that we protect this from fraud. And that's exactly what we're doing each and every day that we're in Florida with these court decisions and making sure that the law is applied equally across the state.
Now, if you have issues with county by county election processes, whether it's in Florida or Arizona, then, you know, I don't want to stand in the way of you introducing legislation saying every state has to do it the exact same way.
Governor, I'm not talking about federalizing elections. I'm talking about the state of Arizona. I'm not talking about federal legislation. I think federalizing the elections would be a bad idea.
Pause it. Let's be clear on what's going on here. The idea of avoiding the solution to this, if you really think it's a problem, this is sheer BS. And good for Jake Tapper for calling him out. Continue.
The Senate race in Arizona is also right now still too close to call. The NRSC sent out a press release accusing the top Maricopa County election official in Arizona of, quote, using his position to cook the books. But the Republican governor of Arizona, Ducey, Republican Secretary of State, they've all voiced support for the process. We haven't heard any complaints from the Republican Senate candidate, Congresswoman Martha McSally. Is there any evidence to support that the Maricopa County elections official are cooking the books?
Pause. There is zero evidence for what we're about to hear Cory Gardner say.
Well, I think what we've seen in Arizona is an attempt to make sure, like in Florida, that we're treating everybody equally under the law. there had been concern that in Maricopa, a process was being used to determine signatures or validation of ballots that differed from places in other parts of the county, other parts of the state, other counties in the state.
What?
Cooking the books, exactly.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Cooking the books is another way of saying count all the ballots.
Make sure everybody's vote is
If you
fairly
make
counted.
sure everybody's vote's fairly counted, in a sense, that's fraud against people who lose elections if all votes are counted. So if you think about it, it's basically doubly unfair.
So whether it was Yuma or Maricopa or other places, they were concerned that Maricopa was holding a standard that was not being allowed to count votes in other parts of the state. So I believe there's been an agreement amongst the counties with the officials there to count everything the same, to follow the same procedure. And that's important because, you know, a vote that's cast in Yuma shouldn't be disqualified under the same provision that qualifies a vote in Maricopa. A legally cast vote, wherever it is legally cast, should count the same, not with differing standards amongst the offices.
I know, but your organization accused an election official of cooking the books. And if you want to get technical here about what emergency voting is in Maricopa County, the law is very vague. Maricopa County set up 4 emergency voting stations before Election Day. 2 of them, by the way, in Republican areas, Mesa and Scottsdale. By the way, it's a county that Joe Arpaio won. I mean, it's a mixed county, and Republicans and Democrats both can win in that county. And different counties interpret that vague law in different ways. That's not cooking the books. And I keep hearing the organization you chair accuse people of breaking the law, and I don't see evidence of it.
Yeah, if you're a voter in Arizona and you cast a vote in Yuma and you cast a vote in Phoenix, legally you did it the same, and your vote in Yuma is disqualified, your vote in Maricopa is not disqualified. Is that fair?
Now, if you have issues with county by county election processes, whether it's in Florida or Arizona, then, you know, I don't want to stand in the way of you introducing legislation saying every state has to do it the exact same way. Governor,
well, I'm not talking about federalizing elections. I'm talking about the state of Arizona. I'm not talking about federal legislation. I think federalizing the elections would be a bad idea. I think making sure that if you're in Arizona, that the vote you cast legally counts. I think that's what we're trying to do. That's what was reached.
Sure.
That's the agreement that was reached in Arizona, and I think that's a good outcome.
I don't want to stand in the way of you introducing legislation saying every state has to do it the exact same way.
Well, we had evidence that people were treating ballots differently. And again, this is about the integrity of when you go and cast a ballot, you don't expect yours to be disqualified under a provision that would allow a ballot to be counted somewhere else.
Pause it. And if you really think it's a problem, why not federalize it? You just made a good case. If it's true with someone in Zuma and Maricopa, why shouldn't it be true with someone in Maricopa and Albany? Or in, I don't know, Chattanooga?
I don't think that's
whose
fair. So
ballots
that's
were
exactly what we're trying to do.
Whose ballots were being disqualified? My understanding of the situation is that what happened was in Maricopa County, they had 4 emergency voting stations set up in the county, and that's what happened. It's not like people in Yuma County were not allowed to vote. It's just that this elections official set up 4 emergency voting stations throughout the county, including in Scottsdale and Mesa, which are Republican leaning.
Well, I think I've answered the question. We just want to make sure that every vote counts and that every vote that's legally cast is counted, and that you don't have different standards on signatures or verifications of those signatures that might not allow a vote to go forward in one part of the state that allows it to go forward in another part of the state.
Now, if you have issues with county by county election processes, whether it's in Florida or Arizona, then, you know, I don't want to stand in the way of you introducing legislation saying every state has to do it the exact same way. But if the Republican governor,
I'm not talking about federalizing elections. I'm talking about the state of Arizona.
I bet you're not.
Legislation. I think federalizing the elections would be a bad idea.
Whoa.
Cory
Federalize
Gardner
elections?
is making, right. I mean, Cory Gardner's making a great argument as to why we need to federalize elections. And I'll tell you why he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to do that for the same reason why the Republicans were adamant about destroying the Voting Rights Act.
I think we're both interested in making sure that every vote is counted, that every person who legally cast is there. That's what this is about. So we're trying to protect the people of Arizona to make sure that whether they cast it in the southeast part of the state or the northeast part of the state, doesn't matter, it counts the same.